Representative Maddox, if you'll introduce yourself and proceed, please.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Petrie and fellow members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm Savannah Maddox, representative of the 61st House District, and I present to you this afternoon Senate Bill 150, a bill which is intended to expand the ability of law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights in accordance with the United States Constitution. I have the privilege of introducing to you an expert in these matters who can speak knowledgeably to the importance and necessity of this legislation. Dr. John Lott Jr. is an economist and a world-recognized expert on guns and crime. He has held research or teaching positions at various academic institutions, including the University of Chicago, Yale University, the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, Stanford University, and Rice University, and was the chief economist at the United States Sentencing Commission during 1988 through 1989. He is currently a contributor to the Hill newspaper and columnist for Fox News and townhall.com. He holds a PhD in economics from UCLA. Nobel laureate Milton Friedman noted, "John Lott has few equals as a perceptive analyst of controversial public policy issues. He is a prolific author for both academic and popular publications. He has published over 100 articles in peer-reviewed academic journals and written 9 books." So thank you, Dr. Lott. Appreciate your willingness to testify.
All right. I appreciate Representative Maddox asking me to come and talk about this. You know, there's so much of the gun control debate involves things might possibly happen. Well, in this case, with this constitutional carry, we really don't need to guess because we have a number of states, 14 states, that actually have already passed such legislation. The concerns that are raised generally that I've been reading about with regard to this constitutional carry bill are remarkably similar to the concerns that were raised back in 1995 and 1996 when the concealed carry bill was originally passed. And as has happened with the states that passed constitutional carry as well as the ones that passed the original right to carry bills, those concerns haven't gone anyplace. In fact, one thing that's interesting, we have 14 states that have this right now: Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Idaho, Kansas, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wyoming. None of the states that have had this have even had a legislative hearing to consider reversing their original decision to adopt this. There are other states that have similar types of rules. Montana, for example, essentially has constitutional carry in about 99.4% of the state. It's only within places that are classified as cities, which are 6 cities in Montana, which within the city limits, you have to have a permit. For Oklahoma and Virginia, they recognize states that have constitutional carry for people to be able to go and carry within their states without having a permit. There are restrictions that you see. Probably the major one that differentiates some of the states, there are 3 states, but only 3 states that limit constitutional carry to the residents of those states, and that's basically North Dakota, Idaho, and Wyoming. There's a similar thing that occurs with regard to open carry. You have 24 states that have essentially constitutional open carry, which don't require a permit and also have prohibitions on local restrictions. You have another 6 states that don't require a permit but do allow some type of local restrictions. Those are usually limited to large cities. So like in Pennsylvania, the 2 cities where it's restrictive are Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Kentucky, just to give you a little bit of background, about 11.4% of adults in Kentucky have a concealed carry permit. That makes it 10th among the states nationwide. About 8% of adults have a concealed carry permit. The cost of getting a permit in Kentucky is $60. That puts it almost exactly at the national average in terms of permit costs. But You have a few states like Illinois and California and New York, which have very high fees, and that raises the average quite a bit. As far as training goes, there's a 6-hour basic class, and then 1 to 2 hours of classroom training is typically the case. That is substantially more training that you see on average across the country. 22 states allow people to carry concealed without having training. At the other extreme, you have a couple states, Illinois and California, which requires 8 hours. But most of the other states are basically going to be in the 4 to 5 hour range. So Kentucky is definitely on the high end right now in terms of training. There's generally a strong relationship between costs and the percentage of people who carry, and also the composition of people who carry. And the main impact seems to be on poorer individuals. If my research convinces me of anything, it's basically poor individuals, particularly poor minorities, are the ones who benefit the most from having the option to be able to go and carry a gun. People who are most likely to be victims of violent crime benefit the most from having the option to be able to go and protect themselves. Police are obviously extremely important, but police almost always arrive on the crime scene after the crimes occurred. And the people who are most likely to be victims of violent crime, having a gun is by far the safest course of action for them to be able to go and protect themselves. And so things that lower the costs from them to be able to go and carry will increase the number of people who carry, but will primarily impact poor individuals, particularly poor minorities, to be able to make sure that they're going to be able to go and carry. When you look across the states in terms of training requirements, there's no correlation that you observe between having longer or even having training requirements and the revocation rate. One thing you observe with concealed carry permit holders is how incredibly law-abiding they are. What you find is that for any type of reason, you're talking about tenths or hundredths of 1 percentage point for revocation. When you're talking about revocations for any type of firearms-related violation, you're talking about hundreds or thousands of 1 percentage point. Most states are in the thousands of percentage point. Right now, we have about 17.5 million concealed carry permit holders in the United States. So there's a huge amount of data out there in terms of revocation rates. Kentucky has a revocation rate at an annual rate of about 0.16%. But obviously that includes a lot of things that have nothing to do with commission of crimes. For example, you can have things like being behind in child support and other things will cause one to go and lose their license to be able to go and carry. Just to give you an idea how law-abiding permit holders are generally, not only are we talking about hundreds or thousands, 1 percentage point, but you can even compare them to people that we have data for, such as police. Police are very rarely convicted of any type of crime compared to the general population. They're convicted about 1/21st the rate of the general population for any type of misdemeanors or felonies, and convicted about 1/30th the rate of the general population in terms of firearms-related violations. Concealed carry permit holders are convicted at much lower rates than police officers are. They're convicted about 1/10 the rate that police officers are for misdemeanors or felonies. I don't have the data for Kentucky because Kentucky doesn't bring it out, but for the states that we do, and they're convicted at about 1/7 the rate that police officers are for any type of firearms-related violations. So now, one thing you can also look at is basically, what's happened to crime rates and also accidental gun deaths before and after states have adopted constitutional carry. There are 3 states that have had these laws in effect for at least 5 years. And if you look at the different types of crime and all categories of violent crime, the average rate in the 5 years after adoption is lower than it was beforehand. You can do more sophisticated analysis, and obviously you need to because a lot of other things are changing. A number of these states have only had these laws in effect for a couple years, though. If you run regression analysis on this, looking at data for the entire United States up to 2017, and you try to account for a range of different factors, such as the impact of law enforcement through things like arrest rates, pre-existing trends in states in terms of crime, that adopt these laws, trying to pull out the pre-existing average differences across states, trying to deal with yearly national changes in crime rates because crime rates tend to go up and down generally across the whole country, and other factors. What you find is that there's evidence that murder rates, rape rates, and aggravated assault rates tend to statistically significantly decline. There's no statistically significant change with regard to robbery. And there's no statistically significant change with regard to accidental gun deaths. Those seem to fall, but not by any statistical amount. So what would we expect with regard to this? If you were to pass such a law, you're going to see either a slowing down of the growth rate or actually a slight drop in terms of concealed carry permits. Some people would have gotten those, will no longer go and get them. People may want to have a permit so that they could go and travel to other states. One thing that's interesting is that for several states that we've been able to get some data for, when you move to a constitutional carry, there appears to be more people signing up for classes to be able to go and get training. So even when training isn't mandated, you'll see an increase in the rate at which people are going to get training. You see some changes in the composition of the training classes that occur there. I think they become more practically oriented type classes and things that actually are many times even more relevant for people carrying than have been mandated in the training rules that you see in different states. I guess the other thing, as I mentioned before, you're going to see a change in the composition of people who carry. Basically, poorer individuals and more minorities are going to be more likely to carry as a result of changing this law than you saw previously. The people who are most likely victims of violent crime are going to have a chance with this law that they wouldn't have had previously to be able to go and protect themselves. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Maddox, anybody else?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.